25th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. I'm going to take just 1 minute to tell you about the Lesbian and Gay Community Services Center. I hope you all know that it's a little way up the block on 13th Street, that more than 5,000 lesbians and gay men come through our doors each and every week, and that in addition to being a home for the meeting of more than 300 different lesbian and gay and AIDS-related organizations, the center itself produces more than 25 programs and projects which are created and produced by both staff members and literally hundreds of volunteers who work at the center. In addition to the National Museum and Archive in Lesbian and Gay History, the center offers social services programs such as Project Connect, our alcoholism intervention and prevention program, Center Bridge, our AIDS mental health project, and Youth Enrichment Services, which provides recreational activity and counseling services to more than 150 lesbian and gay youth each and every week. So we hope that as you learn more about the museum program and this particular exhibition, that you will indeed stop by the center and learn about some of the many other programs which the center offers. Next, I would like to thank our hosts, the Neutral Zone, for opening their home to us this evening as really a home base for Windows on Gay Life. So will you all please join me? Very generous with us, and we are grateful for that. In a moment, I am going to introduce the curator of our exhibition, but in the meantime, there are a number of people whom I would like to thank.
Thank you all very, very much for coming tonight. I have a list of people that I want to thank too, because this project would not have been possible without the help of literally hundreds of people. First off, all of the curators. There are over 37 displays that you'll be seeing tonight, and for each of those displays, there's more than one person who helped to put it together. I'd like to thank all of those people. I'd like to thank the merchants who allowed us to go into their space and use it for these displays. I'd like to thank Rich Wandell, the head of the Museum and Archives. He believed in this silly idea, I don't know why. I'd like to thank Andrew Shackett, Trish Curley, Rosalba Messina, Roberta Scalar, and the entire center staff for putting up with a lot of organizational issues around this project. I'd like to thank Bob Kohler. I'd like to thank Maurice Engler here at the Neutral Zone. And I'd like to especially thank Mark Hodge, who really helped to bring the design and make it consistent and to make sure that all of these windows got into place. This project began about 2 years ago. At that point in time, there was something out there called the Stonewall History Project, which was to be a collaboration between some of the major cultural institutions in New York City to coordinate and bring together an exhibit on lesbian and gay history, politics, and culture in their various spaces for June of '94. For various reasons, that project fell through. However, at one of those meetings, I stood up and I said, this is fun. If you cultural institutions can't pull this off, we, the community, will pull off an exhibit on lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender history, politics, and culture. And all the people that I just thanked, thank you. You didn't make me have to eat my words on this tablet. A report was issued from that project, which suggested that as the museum and archive aspect of those coordinated exhibits, we do some type of historical markers throughout the village that would mark spots as important to our community. I read the report, I said, well, that's neat, but we could do something else. And that something else eventually became Windows on Gay Life. The idea behind the project is to put this stuff in the face of people who would not otherwise attend a formal museum exhibit. This is in your direct path. You do not have to go to a museum. It is simply there. That's the magic of the project. Christopher Street was chosen, I think, for a logical reason. It really kind of is the central thoroughfare of our community, and this project exploits it, literally exploits it as a metaphor for that. Tonight, we're going to be going on a walking tour of this exhibit. Remember, the museum is where you find it, and it's out there. Now, how we're going to do this is we're going to split you into groups so that we don't have this crazy Tony and Tina's wedding kind of crowd going down the street. I'm sure many of you have experienced it with Christopher, and it's not a pretty sight, so we're going to try to avoid that. How we're going to try to avoid that, like I said, is splitting you into groups. I'm going to ask all of the window curators to please go in the first group. When you get to your stop, get off. Okay? Hold change. Get off the bus. We're going to start here at the neutral zone with the 3 windows by various youth groups, which are right outside here. The tour will then proceed down to Hudson Street, take a right, go to Henrietta Hudson's. Henrietta Hudson's goes back to Christopher Street, takes another right, goes all the way up Christopher Street to Greenwich, Pieces Bar, crosses the street, goes down the other side of Christopher Street, back to Hudson. From Hudson, once you've turned onto Hudson Street, taking a right, you're going to go to Creative Visions, formerly a Different Light bookstore, cross Hudson, hit 2 Potato Bar, back to Christopher Street, come all the way down Christopher Street again, do the Dugout and Badlands Adult Video Store, which is across the street here. Then come back here for refreshments, which by that time, you will need them. You will need them. It's muggy out there, folks. Curators, please, 2 minutes max for your presentation. Remember, there are 36 displays, and if you each take 2 minutes, that's already over an hour. We want to get everybody back here within an hour and a half, if that's possible. So let's keep moving out there. There will be tour leaders to help you negotiate this backward route of the tour that we're doing. The first tour leader will be Mark Hodge, the project's design coordinator. Mark, you're around. Mark's back there. So if I could ask all of the curators and the press to go that way.
You should ask Christina Joyce if she wants to say something. You represent It's the right tool. It's just a tool. Still very butch
Use the autoclave.
I can't ask you to split yourself in half, not 10.
Remember where I don't know if I reached you.
Yeah,
Well, we are going to.
Hi, how are you?
Listen, the meeting this Sunday.
All right, Henrietta Hudson's on Hudson. Follow me.
Hi, this is the Lesbian Avengers windows, and it's on Dyke Action. The Lesbian Avengers is a direct action group focused on lesbian visibility and survival. And this window is in essence an action about lesbian survival, and it is also an interactive piece, and people are invited. There's a mailbox inside, and people are invited to go in and respond and ask questions, and periodically some of these statements will be incorporated into the piece. And that's really about it. Oh, and the key, my favorite little part about this whole piece is that we have an article from the Village Voice after Stonewall that talks about how Dyke started Stonewall, the riot. So that's a little extra special spot. That's it.
Maybe we should introduce ourselves too, might be nice.
Okay, I'm Laura Perry, and I work with National Center for Lesbian Rights. This is Jamie Ospina, and she's one of our legal interns for the summer. The windows were a collaboration between NCLR and a group called Lesbian Visual Artists, which is a national group as well, based in San Francisco, which is in fact where we are based. We opened our New York office just last year here at the New York office. The Windows theme is visibility and lesbians of color in the gay and lesbian movement. And NCLR has a Lesbian of Color project, which does outreach to the lesbian community. Jamie will give us some information about it. Basically, it's lead on between the lesbian of color community and the legal system. The windows on the front, unfortunately, I don't know, I guess you can't all see the side, but the front is works all by lesbians of color, and there's a description of National Center for Lesbian Rights here, and the lesbian visual artist of the next panel, and works by lesbians of color. Inside, maybe some other time y'all can drop by and have a look. There are all black and white photos of all sorts of, just tons of lesbians of color in activist work. You know, people at demos, people marching, just working on whatever projects. Audre Lorde, lots of different famous lesbians of color. So that's about it. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Here's the
The curator. Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill Peters, the curator for this particular exhibit. I'm also the development director for Lambda Legal Defense and Education Fund, which is this organization. What we've tried to depict here, or what we have, I think, depicted here, is a chronological history of Lambda in its 21 years. We began in 1973, and the very first case that we had to fight, and I'll explain that we do test litigation on behalf of gays, lesbians, people with HIV/AIDS. We do legal work. We work through the legal system for the civil rights and the human rights of gays, lesbians, and people with HIV/AIDS. Our very first case, and when we started in 1973, was for our own existence, because we had to sue the state of New York to become an organization, a nonprofit organization. They did not want to give us nonprofit status because they did not see the worth of our organization, which was providing a service to the gay and lesbian community. So that was our very first case. And what this exhibit shows are some highlights of the cases that we have been involved in. In 1984, we brought the very first AIDS suit that was brought by Lambda and won. We also, as you can see, have various other areas there that we've been involved with. The Sharon Kowalski and Karen Thompson case, as you remember, where the lover was not allowed to be the provider for her helpmate. That was a case that we won. Karen Thompson is one of our current board members. And so as we just go through the 21 years, we've taken highlights and taken big cases, and there are a lot more that we are involved in. Most recently, last week, I know you've read the news that we won the case for Greta Kammermeyer, who was the colonel, the nurse who was thrown out of the service and who has now been allowed to go back. That is a case of ours. A case that another case specifically for New York City is that we won the gay teacher suit, which provides for domestic partnership coverage, not only for all gays and lesbians, but for all employees within the city of New York, which is probably the largest municipality in the world of employees. So, and we've just recently won a gay initiative case in Florida, where the Supreme Court knocked from the ballot a gay, anti-gay initiative. So this is the type of work we do. This is what this exhibit demonstrates through the highlights. The civil and legal work that Lambda provides to the gay, lesbian community on your behalf. Thank you. This is John Gravano, the owner of the store.
Small world, isn't it?
Artist and curator in this window is the small sculptural interpretation of AS, which is the closest sarcoma, which you probably know. And it is, my whole concept is that things are not just skin deep, and you really need to be able to look at these things and find out what does it look like. It's not like, oh my God, I'm just scared of it, but look at it straight in the face. And you know, you realize that we're all flesh and blood, and just because you have spots on your body doesn't mean that you can't have a productive, joyous life and painful life, you know, as everybody else dies around you. But so basically, that's really all I have to say about it, except that one thing is I'm also a drag performer, and I use my old drag to build my artwork. So I believe in definitely continuing life, you know, in any way, shape, or form, whether it's feather or, you know, broken mirror. And I think it's really important for those of us who have KS or any kind of, you know, thing related to not necessarily AIDS, but, you know, got to get over this physical, you know, body fascism, because it's just disgusting. And, you know, I have a very full and wonderful life today, and it would be if I wasn't expressing myself, because then I just turn everything into my, you know, and it's not what it's about. So, thanks. Thanks a lot.
More people coming. Do we have a curator for this window? I guess not. Maybe what I'll do is just read really quickly the text panel for everybody so we don't all have to crowd around. African and Ancestral Lesbians United for Societal Change Incorporated, formerly Salsa Soul, is a 20-year-old organization serving lesbians of color. The oldest lesbian organization in continuous existence, we are committed to the spiritual, cultural, educational, economic, and social empowerment of African ancestral women. We are dedicated to making our voices heard in advocacy for women's rights through a redefined philosophy and holistic objectives that use workshops with open discussions to empower and achieve the following. 1. Awaken the spiritual power of African ancestral women. 2. Provide educational tools for the development of progressive thinking. 3. Empower African ancestral women to become advocates for economic, educational, health, and political change. 4. Provide resources and referrals for various needs. 5. Provide opportunities for social and cultural interaction with all women, consisting of dances, theater, cultural events, poetry readings, conferences, festivals, music, plays, and more. Thank you.
Thank you. John Neiman, who actually put this together, had a plan for his son's graduation from college today, so he's not here. We have a series of photos set up to look very much like photo cubes your parents might have of you at home, with different family photos. And you can see it on the sides, you can see it in front, you can see it from different angles. Families who have been involved with our organization, including one of our newborns who just born a couple of months ago to one of our families. We are families of people who've been married, then come out. We're families of people who've adopted. We're families with women who have had children through donor insemination. We're families where lesbians and gay men have gotten together and have children. And we exist for the parents, but we also exist for our kids. We get together once a year in a large conference, which is separate recreation activities for little kids, a conference run by teenagers, for teenagers, and one for parents and parents to be.
Thank you.
And the next one is right in here, so maybe if we come this way.
Our concept for the window was that what people enjoy for their work and for their leisure activities shouldn't be determined by gender. And if an interest in gender and in the family, we did a window that showed a variety of family arrangements with the idea that everybody, regardless of color, creed, and sexual orientation, should enjoy the support of a family and the emotional joys that the family could bring.
Now you're supposed to stay here for the next groups that come through.
Oh, yeah,
and then pick up with the last group.
Okay.
And instead of posing for it, just take a look, show us the pictures or something. Yeah, there we go. That's it. You got it. Great. Thank you.
When the last group comes.
I love it.
Pick up.
Yeah, at all of us. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a moment here. Come on, give a big smile.
Actually, can we get to an other side of the window and make it like a better? We can get to the pictures better. Thank you.
Can they talk and do a picture at the same time?
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it.
Yeah, talk and pose at the same time.
Do it all. You got it.
You can.
Well, does anybody have, I mean, no one's come up and seen the window yet, is that correct?
We're the first group.
Right, we're the first group.
So you can work it out on us.
Oh, yeah. You're supposed to give us a little, explanation of the window.
Okay, well, you should probably come up and also look at the window because there's a lot of stuff to see, layers of things. And our point is that homophobia is a health hazard, that women, whether they're lesbians or non-lesbians, that they're not included in clinical trials, whether it's heart disease, medications, or the other extreme. And this window touches on all aspects of health, whether it's breast cancer, HIV, mental health, the high incidence of suicide among lesbians and gay men as teenagers, the fact that virtually no drugs are tested on women, not to mention the fact that they use male rats because they're easier to handle and they don't have hormonal cycles allegedly. So that's one of our messages here. So you want to talk about the suicide portion down here, the mental health?
I mean, it's just in my lifetime, I grew up with a gay parent and a gay sister, and all of us kind of dealing with addiction and with depression. And as a woman, I've noticed, straight and gay, a predominance of suicide attempts, and for gay men it seems to be that there's more of a success rate. And I was finding that the statistics for suicide and for addiction were extremely high, but when I was trying to find the reports and the statistics on a suicide task force that was done for gay and lesbian youth, I couldn't get it anywhere in any of the libraries. And so that Bush had put kind of a stop on a report that was done, and that frightened me. And just
we found out all kinds of stuff.
And just to recognize that there's a lot of addiction. There's a lot of people who are recovering, which is great, but there are a lot of people who aren't surviving from it. And if we can be out and loud and supportive, younger and more extremely, well, maybe there's some hope.
And Tracy Primavera over here designed the logo for Windows with Gay Life and the map.
And the map that we're using.
Yeah. The map and the logo for the event.
So you guys have more groups coming in the... Do I have a two-step curator and I can't see that far, so...
It's in the program.
Okay, where are we? 13. Boots and Saddle, okay. This is called Let's Dance. Tucker Farley was the curator. We're at Boots and Saddle. Country Western dancing has been part of lesbian and gay history for at least a century. Let's Dance highlights lesbian and gay country dancing and swing dancing. So there's, for you over here, there's also a portion on the other window up top as well.
We're competing with their performance.
You guys are stragglers.
And this is Jane McNamara. We're both historians. And the subject of our window is physique magazines in the 1950s. We're looking at physique magazines as one of the few places that gay men could go to find images of themselves. And we're arguing that these images, because of the social and legal climate in the 1950s, had to be coded in some way. So that the messages about gay identity are there, but they were hidden in order to escape censorship. So what we're doing here is combining imagery with text that sort of comments on the ways in which each image was coded. So some of the themes we have are like an argument about gay identity being natural. We're looking at the ways in which physique magazines often posed models in very natural settings and associated them with the natural environment. We talk about contamination theories, which were ran rife in the 1950s in the panel near the end, and then about gays in the sort of ambivalent role of gays in the military and the imagery that
I guess that's... Could you say something so I can take your picture?
Oh, sure. Well, one of the things that's interesting actually is that we've had some controversial reactions to the sexuality of these images, which is interesting in light of the fact that they were in publications that claimed not to be sexual at all, but in fact only about health and fitness.
And in the 1950s, not the 1950s.
Has anybody said things were better back then? The stuff that's there.
None that we've heard.
We had the president of the Block Association over here who said that she's getting a lot of complaints about the nudity, and in lengthy conversation with her I said, could you do me a favor and research it for me and find out if it's the nudity or the homosexuality that they have a problem with. True story, she found out that what they're having a problem with is the homosexuality, not the nudity. So originally she was going to have me take it out, but she's not going to.
Particularly the one
Good for you. Good question. Good call.
How long has she been here?
I'm sorry?
How long has she been on the block?
The president of the block?
Yeah.
About 2 years now.
I just don't understand how anyone can take that cowboy thing as being any less than,
She hasn't been very long.
I mean, how could you disguise as what? I mean, I don't know. How could you disguise that?
Yeah, I know.
But it's what they claimed
Cowboys can take shots to each other on range.
We have some of these to distribute if you'd like. They're the statement that's in the window and the heterosexual questionnaire, which is featured in the window. My name is Stephen Robert Frankel. This is Jonathan Borstein, passing out these things as well. And here, you just pass them around. That's the easiest way. Two each.
Two each. White and the pink one.
Our third is David McFadden, the Assistant Director of the Cooper Hewitt Museum here in New York. He's going to make it tonight. Briefly, Jonathan had an idea for an exhibition about a year ago on the relationship between gay and lesbian sexuality and design. And we couldn't do it as an exhibition this year, so we turned it into a panel discussion and a slide presentation at the conference that Olga, the Organization of Lesbian and Gay Architects and Designers, is holding on the 24th of this month at Cooper Union. And I got the idea that when I heard about the windows on Gay Life, that we should do it as a window display, and we did. And basically it explores the relationship of sexual identity to stereotype and codes, how we recognize each other, how we recognize what's gay and lesbian in the world. And that really, we decided, was the foundation for all discussion of the relationship between sexuality and design. I mean, if you can recognize whether someone is gay or lesbian in the street by looking at them, that's sort of the basis for how you might be able to recognize whether design can be seen as gay or lesbian. So we started with 1969 to the present, basically sort of a sampling of little things that you might have collected or put away in your closet or in your drawers. And so there are postcards, snapshots. There are actually a couple of real signatures from icons, Liberace and Hitler, club invitations, some campaign buttons, and then some clothing, some pornos, some magazines, records, a couple of CDs, the weights. You can see everything here. Design magazines, track lighting, which we got from. There was a line in Steel Magnolias. So how did it go? Do you remember?
About track lighting.
Yeah, it's a gag line about, how did you know my brother was gay? Oh, well, he had track lighting, darling, something like that. So, and I even found in my own collection some old matchbooks from all the major clubs and bars from the 70s and 80s, going back to Keller's and the Anvil and the Saints, etc.
What's the wine?
It's a Freixenet, of course. The black one, the black and gold one. And so we actually were going to try and get the wig formed, but we couldn't get that. Actually, we borrowed from a couple of friends to finish out the thing. Leather jackets from somebody who's on this tour, and a couple of other things.
I think
I think the closet speaks for itself, actually. You probably find things that are in your own closet or similar things in your own closet. There's really these sort of things that kind of accumulate in the shelves, the back of the closet that where we were at different times of our lives, exploring different aspects of our identity. And at some point, we grow out of them or just with inside, they stay there. And we create a stylized version for education, whatever.
Oscar Wilde Memorial Bookshop and Craig Rodwell helped shape lesbian and gay life in New York City. Oh,
Hi.
are you?
Well, I'm not the owner. Bill's here. Oh, the camera. I just started working here recently, so I wish I could tell you a little more about the history. I'll tell you what I know, though.
Okay.
It was started obviously by Craig Rodwell, and he started it almost 27 years ago. That's the first gay and lesbian bookshop. A couple of interesting things. When he first started, there was like almost no books in the store. It was like, you know, a title of 20 books, and now we have a lot more titles. And if you want to come in and take a look at it, you're welcome to also. But unfortunately, Craig passed away last year, so Bill Offenbaker is now the owner, and he's taking care of it. He knew Craig quite well, actually. So he's in charge of the shop, and he's the owner now. But we really pride ourselves as being the first gay and lesbian bookstore. And what Bill put together was a window of some of the memories, some of the employees, and some of the... We just had someone come in right now, I don't see him, who had worked here from 74 to 78. And I discussed a little bit of the differences, you know, a lot more titles now, and some of the problems that they had then and we have now as being a gay and lesbian bookstore certainly are less now as far as gay bashing. So these are just some of the pictures of what the store was before. They used to have a lot of Meet the Authors Day. They sometimes did reading as well. Gosh, I don't know what else to tell you. If you want to pass this around, take a look at it. Just a little more about what Craig did himself, because he was very active in the community and some other people he worked with. And some of the letters were also commendations for what Bill did and everything as well. And thanks for stopping by.
Thanks to you. There'll be more. There's about 3 more groups coming.
Oh, so I have to do this again, another speech?
Why don't mind.
Okay, well,
You'll be great at it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Very good. Thanks.
Thanks for stopping by. Bye-bye.
We don't have anybody from Dyke TV right here, right now. Right here, right now.
All right. I'll do a quick read again. Yeah, I'm just going to read this.
Yeah, okay. We're also changing the loop of a couple of things.
Oh,
We'll be
okay.
different videos throughout the month.
Great. That's good. This past year, lesbians have loudly confronted America with our existence by taking to the streets. We've graced the covers of mainstream magazines and have created our own venues for artistic expression, such as Dyke TV, where our voices can be heard. We have been elected and appointed to a record number of political posts. On the other hand, because of our newfound cultural power, the radical right is working feverishly to force us back in the closet. We've experienced a rise in violence against us on both physical and political levels. Public tolerance for such violence has become more widespread as dozens of local and statewide anti-gay initiatives have been organized across the country. It is more dangerous than ever to walk down the streets as an out dyke. The radical right will try to intimidate us as part of their strategy, and we, as lesbians, must continue to be courageous in the face of oppression. As the hate groups step up their measures, so must we. It is vital to our survival that we continue to be visible, proud, and out in every aspect of our lives. And inside, like over down here, if you can't see, there's what could be Dyke TV brochures. And there's also some stuff down here too that maybe you can see. Framed newspaper articles.
Thank you.
Well read.
Kate, what's her name? You know who I thought she was? I thought she was Felicity.
All right. Are you?
Yes, this is mine. My name is Remsen Wolf, and I've been working on a project called Special Girls, which I have to be a book soon. Transvestites, transsexuals, drag queens, androgynous, people from New York and Amsterdam. And these are a few of the 127 models that I've photographed. Ms. Volva. I've photographed in the parallel series called The Miss Volva Story, from which these 2 pictures are taken. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it.
When does it come out?
I'm looking for a publisher.
But do you need any more models?
Always need more models.
Are you going to have anything on Marsha P. Johnson in your book?
On what?
Are you going to have anything about Marsha P. Johnson in your book?
I haven't. No, I don't. I'm just photographing.
Here's the beginning.
Okay. Thank you very much.
These are all self-portraits.
Who are you? Introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Lisa Ross. I'm a photographer. I teach photography to lesbian and gay youth at the Harvey Milk High School and the Heteroporn Institute. So I teach in the high school, I teach in the after-school program, and to homeless youth. I use photography as a means of exploring myself and my life, and I have my students do the same thing. And these photographs are sort of just a scratch on the surface, and they are, for me, they're an exploration. But in general, what they're supposed to do for people is, or what I want, is that everybody to have the ability to explore both the masculine and feminine parts of ourselves, because everyone doesn't fit into these categories of male and female as we're supposed to. So and the world is completely different when you are different than your own gender. So that's kind of what these are about. But one thing that I wrote in my statement was that Remsen and I were talking about passing and looking really real. And the important thing for me is that everyone does it to the extent that they want to. That you express yourself, you don't have to pass, but just that you yourself is able to get in touch with whatever side of yourself that you want to get in touch with on the gender spectrum. That's it. What's your name? Lisa.
No, they're her, all pictures of her. They're self-portraits.
Are you serious?
Yes, you didn't even know what she said, Coco.
Yeah.
Please, sounds running my tape.
Oh, it's wonderful.
She's so good.
No curator? Nobody here? All right. I will try to read loudly again so you can hear. It's called Body of Art, Soul of Our Community. The 5,000 lesbians and gay men who come through the center each week do not all come in search of art, but art is what they all find. The center is a living gallery for contemporary visual artists, a public art space featuring site-specific works and regular exhibits. This window highlights many of the center's unexpected treasures. Come see the originals and more at the Lesbian and Gay Community Services Center, 208 West 13th Street. So if you pop in, it's just photographs of like the herring mural in the men's room, other murals around the center. And here we are at the famous stone wall. The curator of this window is Joey Jeffries, who is also the curator for the Hall project, and he's leading another group. So, once again, this is the global stone wall. On this site, on June 27th, 1969, erupted an event that has come to be known as the Stonewall Riots. On that night, a routine police raid of this bar unexpectedly turned into a violent confrontation between its patrons and authorities, resulting in a week-long series of demonstrations and clashes. Generally recognized as the defining moment of the lesbian and gay liberation movement, catapulting our concerns into frontline action, historian Martin Duberman argues that the riots are, quote, the central symbolic event of the modern gay movement. 25 years after the riots, this window serves as a homecoming for a range of cultural artifacts which beckon back to that night in June 1969. As these publications, organizational logos, and merchandise demonstrate, the name Stonewall, like the riots, has impacted worldwide. Employment of the Stonewall name on such a vast scale indicates a profound identification and impact. Remarkably, this impact is nowhere more clearly demonstrated than through the collection of merchandise. Capitalizing on the recognition and marketability of the word, the results are often kitsch. Yet it may be argued that if something lacks in impact, it cannot even hope to rise to this low regard. This assemblage of Stonewall items serves as a reminder that Stonewall was a riot. Now we need a revolution.
So this is the actual exhibit. It's a display about Metropolitan Community Church, which is a denomination that started in 1968, a year before Stonewall, and has been actively involved in the lesbian and gay community ever since. And what we wanted to do in this display was to give people a glimpse into the ways that Metropolitan Community Church has been active throughout the past 25 years of lesbian and gay history. And so the photographs show some of both national, local, and international photos. MCC is the largest lesbian and gay organization in the world. It's in this country and about 18 others around the world. There are over 280 congregations. And I curated and did a lot of the history and research, and my partner Sandra Jones did the actual art design and put the exhibit together.
When I saw this space, my goal was to make this fit in to the rest of the bar posters, to confirm our experience that for gays and lesbians who want it, religion and spirituality don't need to be separated out from gay lives. So I just hope it sort of blends in. I chose the color red to honor the martyrs of this denomination, 35 people who were killed in a firebombing of a church in New Orleans in 1973. Approximately 40 more churches and MCC buildings have been firebombed, including the church headquarters. And to honor the martyrs of our community who died of AIDS, red is the color in the Christian tradition of martyrdom. It represents both fire and blood. The pink triangles speak for themselves.
He sort of, there's only this like little placard here. George, if you don't know, is the author of a new book called Gay New York, which has just been published, and it's a very fabulous history of gay and lesbian New York up to about 1940, I think, or 1950. Anyway, this reads, on this spot once stood the Life Cafeteria. In the years before Stonewall, gay men and lesbians boldly turned some of the city's best-known cafeterias into meeting places. Tolerated by managers keen to generate business late at night after the family trade had been served their dinner, gay people gathered openly, socialized with their friends, and set the tone with their campy conversation and antics. Some cafeterias became so notorious as fairy hangouts that they attracted the notice of tourists and of young gay people searching for people like themselves. The most famous such cafeteria in the village in the 1930s was the Life Cafeteria, which one distraught observer charged in 1936 had become the meeting ground for exhibitionists and degenerates of all types. Dick Addison, who first visited the Life in 1939 when he was a 16-year-old from the Bronx, remembered its significance when he came out. Quote, the Life Cafeteria was a big hangout. Faggots from all over the country would gather there. They'd just sit in the window, drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes and carrying on. It had huge plate glass windows so people on the street could see in, and tourists would pass by to see them because they wore heavy makeup, blue eyeshadow, rouge, mascara, and had long hair. It attracted young people coming out, like me. They would go there because they didn't know anywhere else to go. They'd go to the village because they'd heard that that was where the action was, and then see this cafeteria and go there. They could go in there and have a cup of coffee for a nickel, sit and occupy a table and laugh and talk all night long. It was a place where they could meet people.
Slowly it all fades away, 1930s. What? Only one old man remembers, right?
Although the time when this window is cruising, the window is basically about
disco and the related aspects like the 70s. In the early part of Stonewall, there of course were a lot of nightclubs and a lot of different kinds of bars and after-hours clubs. But after Stonewall, they became more of a known commodity in the community. And on this side over here, we have a lot of disco cards from that particular era. On the other side over there in the mirror, you can see some bathhouse and other kinds of party clubs.
Another pillar here.
Inside is the fact that during this period of time in the 70s, there was a lot of loose sex, drugs, disco, but as time passed, we got more smaller families that formed smaller groups and started going to places together, and they formed individual families. And over a period of time, those families actually started taking care of each other. What you see also in here is just a lot of posters. Really? Yeah, and some memorabilia and some different things. I think that disco had a visual image impact on a lot of things that happened in the 70s, especially with design and publications when they came out. And if you go back and study like porno magazines in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you'll see that what the art directors were doing in those magazines a couple of years later were in the public magazines that were not, seen at the same time. And the music changed, and so it's just progression all the way through. And and I'm collecting all kinds of specifically disco memorabilia to give to the library. So anybody knows anybody that has any cards or anything, let me have them. Okay?
No, I'm not. Bob, I'm filling in, a poor fill-in for Bob Kohler, who is currently having heart surgery. And we all hope that he's feeling a lot better right now. Anyway, the window was Bob's idea. Bob's feeling and my feeling and a lot of the people that were there at the time feel that as important as the riots were, and they would have been a footnote in history if it wasn't for what came after the riots. And what came after the riots was a political movement. The first part of that political movement was an organization by the name of Gay Liberation Front, which Bob and I, and if you look at the top of the presentation where it says "Come Out," all the people along the top of that poster were pioneers of the movement that started the Gay Liberation Front, that were there during the riots and then went on to form GLF. There were people before us, like Mr. Wicker here, who we should applaud because he deserves it. But after Mr. Wicker, I will name the people because I want their names known because they get no recognition whatsoever. On the left, we start off with Michael Boyle, who was in the riots and formed GLF. Right above Mr. Boyle is Dan Smith, who was in the riots and was a pioneer, formed GLF. The man with his hands down, I feel, is one of the most important of all. His name was Mike Brown. Nobody here, I'm sure, has heard of him. But Mike Brown was, I feel, like the soul of GLF and was ultimately important in getting the movement going. Beyond him in the back is Earl Galvin, who was in the riots and helped form GLF. Now, the two I feel most important women at the beginning, there's three most important women. The woman down below the woman with the headband is Lois Hart, who is I would say, the woman's soul of the beginning of the movement. Lois Hart, I can't say enough for her. She deserves an unbelievable amount of credit for her articulation of what had to be accomplished, and she was a brilliant woman. She's no longer with us. Her girlfriend, Suzanne, is right above her with the headband on. As we go a little further off, we have Pete Wilson, who was there during the riots and helped form GLF. Other people are me and Jerry Hoons, Bob Kohler, and a man by the name of Charles Pitts, who we can't find any pictures of. Who, if anybody knows where he is, please tell me. He worked for WBAI in 1969, and he was very much important in founding the gay movement. Also, Martha Shelley, the woman who is around today, thank God, with her hand up in the air, was very important. She was there at the beginning and helped form everything. Basically what we have here is a montage up there in the corner of different demonstrations that GLF had. At the very beginning, Bob and I were involved in putting on gay dances before the firehouse, before GAA. And we went to the Village Voice, which used to be on the corner here, and tried to put in an ad that said gay dance. They refused that ad. The only word they would use was homophile, which somebody in GLF said, what is that, a gay nail file? Anyway, we put up a picket line, which you can see in that picture there, around the Village Voice office, and I believe it took 2 days before they capitulated, and we got our ad that said gay dance. We did many demonstrations. We demonstrated at the Time Life building and many demonstrations. I like the text. On June 29, 1970, 1 year after the Stonewall riots, gay journalist John Francis Hunter asked, where do you send the congratulations, the birthday greetings, in commemoration of a year of astounding and unprecedented progress toward equality under the law and universal dignity for gays and lesbians in America? 25 years later, I suggest we begin by acknowledging a small group of self-proclaimed radicals who were able to see beyond the riots, who demanded an end to racism, sexism, classism, I read that backwards, who envisioned a society where all people would be free. Their battle cry was "Come Out," which was the name of the GLF newspaper also. Their manners rude, and boy were we rude, and their goals the impossible dream. Mad, sir, mad indeed, but oh how they did light up the sky. This window is dedicated to the heroes of the Gay Liberation Front. And I want a round of applause for Bob Kohler, who is the most articulate spokesman of the gay movement today, I feel.
Thank you very much. Right. Are you the curator for this one? Oh, I am. Okay, great.
Hi, my name is Brendan Fay, and I am with ILGO and with Winter Éireach Nahéir, Irish Gay and Lesbian Cultural Organisation. In this window, we sort of captured the spirit of Stonewall, which had repercussions all over the globe, including Ireland. And Ireland's contemporary gay and lesbian movement was captured that spirit of Stonewall, and thus began the contemporary gay and lesbian movement in Ireland. And you can see here we have among the earliest gay and lesbian demonstrators in Dublin in the early 70s. It says, homosexuals are revolting. This is on the streets of Dublin. But my sense was, I want to say, there have always been lesbian and gay people throughout human history, some personally and some in groups, but I wanted to highlight those in Irish history who have resisted the silence of centuries of homophobia in their own way. Probably the person we're all familiar with is Oscar Wilde, who is probably one of our heroes of our movement in terms of resisting the social, political, religious, cultural norms of his day and truly being himself. And also, in a way, he is a martyr because of the price he had to pay for being openly gay. Also, in the lesbian community, these ladies of Llangolan are also known as the lesbians of Llangolan, and they lived at the end of the 18th, early 19th century. Of course, in Irish history, begins with the first sodomy laws in Ireland were introduced, in fact, from England in the 1640s, and in fact, in the 1634. The first person executed in Ireland for sodomy was the very person who led the campaign to have those laws enacted in the Irish House of Parliament. So we've got very interesting there, so watch out for very homophobic loud clerics. This man was a bishop. I have maybe over over here we have the contemporary movement in Ireland. This is two important front covers of Gay Community News in Dublin, and there's the President of Ireland surrounded by leaders of the Irish lesbian and gay community. Here, leaders of our community are celebrating the change in Irish law, and they're the two moments in Irish history. And of course, we have some famous writers, architects, poets, priests, all who are out of the closet and living out their true, full selves without shame, guilt or fear, including Father Bernard Lynch, an openly gay priest, of which there was a witch hunt. In his life he was accused of sexual molestation and so on. Here we have, of course, ILGO, the Irish Lesbian and Gay Organisation, which in a way put the Irish Lesbian and Gay movement certainly on the public map in New York, and for the 4th year we've been excluded from the St. Patrick's Day Parade. However, in Ireland it's a different story. Here you can see in the colour photograph the Irish Gay and Lesbian float, which was both cheered, celebrated, and not only that, they received awards. And lastly, I want to say there are always gay and lesbian people fighting in different ways, and to me the most recent of here is Donna McAnallen, on April 26, 1993, dismissed from her job because she was seen kissing another woman. And she took that case to court and thus changed Irish laws. Her case changed Irish laws regarding employment. So I want to say every day the spirit of Stonewall somewhere around the world challenges us to be out there up front, and I'm very proud of this window and to be both Irish and gay, and to challenge the notions of bigots who believe you cannot be gay and Irish, and also to challenge Irish phobia in the gay community who believe that maybe if you're gay you just can't be Irish. Thank you. Thank you.
Basically, it shows, not really a progression, but it shows that S&M lifestyle has come out of the, back rooms and back streets, and it's more common. There's clubs, there's groups. It's a very tight-knit organization. There's motorcycle clubs, and they teach how to get involved into S&M sex safely and so forth. So it's been a real progression since the beginning to now. There's also a timeline in here that I got that shows about leather history from BC, so that's kind of interesting also.
Great. Thank you.
So, this is from Glad, obviously. We have taken positive images of gays and lesbians in Hollywood movies all the way from 1960 through to 94. And it's timeline right here, so we're cruising 80 right now. The little clips which, show these images, and you sit through, it's about 15 minutes long. And Death Trap, Superman kissing Michael Caine.
Wow. 80 seconds.
Like the bins.
What's the
It's a timeline.
1960?
1960. Well, we went back and went through Celluloid Closet and stuff like that, to try to find movies which had somewhat positive images. And Spartacus was the first one. Right. It was the first one we thought that had. Actually, the scene that was in Spartacus was not put in until recently in video release.
Great.
And all the way through to Go Fish, which is just a laser.
Okay, thank you. There's two more groups now.
Right.
This activist art presentation is an angry response to the hate indoctrination on the false pretense of morality by self-promoting opportunists who feed on theirs and other people's emptiness, ignorance, and insecurities by attacking alternative lifestyle citizens' equal rights. I hate ignorance and am using this media to hopefully open up the eyes and minds of the world, expressing my feelings that we must not, quote, tolerate intolerance and hate. Never again. Yeah. Okay.
And then you zoom in or out. You have a stack of them, I need all of them. Go get me a bundle. Yeah.
You can give it them out.
Yes. Well, don't.
This is exhibit in with the spirit of Stonewall, not against it. I wanted to put the spirit of Stonewall in a certain perspective because I know that so many people seem to be so unaware not only what happened in the United States during the 50s and 60s that I think made possible Stonewall becoming a possibility, but even going back to the real founder of the gay liberation movement, the man in utter dark ages of history in 1897 started the first gay liberation movement in the world in Germany, Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, who I think far too few homosexuals know about today. This man forged the first, we have a leaflet here which has the whole explanation. He forged a coalition with women's groups that kept them from adding lesbianism to the anti-gay rules in 1910. As early as 1905, he had forums with thousands of people in attendance. And we should all remember the lessons of history because this man achieved so much, and yet in 1933, the rise of Nazism came and swept him away and destroyed his library, burned his headquarters. We should always remember that while childhood history is running in our favor now, there's always a chance that there's going to be an awful backlash. We should look back at history and learn from this. I've tried to break it down into the gay press. The great breakthrough was in the early 50s. One magazine printed. They said they didn't have the right. Perverts had no right to opinion. They had no right to distribute in the U.S. mail. They fought it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said no, that homosexuals had a right of a free press. The next few years you had the Mattachine Review and then the Ladder, which was the first lesbian review. This is 1966. For 6 months they had only a cover of the Ladder. They had their first lesbian space in the ocean showing only their backs in 62. In 64 they had the first full-face lesbian, a woman from Indonesia, but finally in 65 and 66 people really were coming out of the closet. You can see in these demonstrations there's a Ladder cover, civil, I see now they just spelled civil. Civil Service Commission protesting discrimination against gays in federal employment. The right to be served alcohol Mattachine, that's in the Julius bar, challenging the laws that made it illegal to serve a gay a drink, which got those laws overturned. Castro began rounding up people, putting them in work camps in 1965. They began demonstrating at the White House. It was so successful they had 3 demonstrations in one summer. And things went on. It's 100. I mean, they had maybe 129 hours of Mattachine in the Treasury, but the homophobe Bill Dowdy from Texas fought a congressional investigation because the vice president or secretary of the society didn't have their real name on the thing. I mean, of all the things that congressmen had to do was go after these few small people trying to make a difference. One of whom, and probably the man that's worked more in this movement than any other living person, and I can point him out, is Dr. Franklin Tammany, who I know has worked for 30 years, his whole life in this movement, selfishly and with great skill. And of course you've seen Craig Rodwell, who started the first gay bookshop that we had the honor of seeing. Here are the 2 women that started the first lesbian organization in 1955. And here we have Edward Carpenter. It's interesting, if you read his book, he'll say that gays were more devoted, more monogamous and everything than heterosexuals, which being sort of a worldly person, you say, wow, this guy seems so sincere, could he be lying? And then you discover that Edward Carpenter lived with one other man out in the country for 50 years in a monogamous relationship. So when he was writing, he believed he was writing from the heart. He was not familiar with the promiscuity or the fluid ways of modern day society. So like I said, I have a lot of this information. Anyone that wants to read it, I think these are all things we all have to really share. Have to get to just have someone that wants to.
So you can bunch in and check those. I love these things.
Way too much fun. He's talking about this
this window?
Gloria's not here. She's working, unfortunately. I did as much as I know. Okay, so now we're gonna head down. Oh, hi, Thomas. Nice coming over. How are you?
John Berger, and this is my window. Basically, it's a timeline of queer erotic idols from the 1890s to the present. And what I put forth is that pornography, queer pornography, is an important gauge of queer history in two ways. First, since we are constructed primarily on our sexuality, queer pornography documents our sexuality, how we have it, where we have it, what we look like when we have it. Second, until recently, we've been denied access to the primary means of historic construction in this country, textbooks, monuments, things like that. So in pornography, when you see examples of the Wild West, or men in uniform in the Vietnam War, or men dressed as cops, I put forth that this is just an example of how we are trying to visually and sexually rewrite ourselves into the history books from which we have been omitted over a number of years. On the other hand, though, too, this does document certain prejudices that we have within our own community. As you can see, I've selected what I call archetypes of the porn star over certain eras. That is, people who were big for their time, very popular. And there is a very noticeable dearth of men and women of color. There's also a very visible dearth of lesbians. And until recently, in the commercial porn market, lesbians making films about lesbians for lesbians hasn't been happening. It's sort of been a fantasy construct in heterosexual films for heterosexual men. And so until like early 1990s, a little bit before that, but until very recently, there hasn't been a big lesbian market. And so this timeline sort of reflects the heroes or anti-heroes, if you will, of a very, very long history of gay erotic symbols and stars.
Now we can just move straight over to...
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did a good job. There's only one thing that goes in between 1890s for me and 1960s.
What?
Right. It's in there, but it's not in there. And that's the Charlie Atlas home.
Oh, yeah.
The what? Charles
Atlas.
Oh, really?
You know,
he was never out there for he was out there for you to learn how to gain weight.
Oh, well, let me tell you, I have letters. I was an editor of a male magazine, and I have a letter that Charles Atlas, this 18-year-old fan, wrote, "Dear Charles Atlas, I've been an admirer of yours for this time Charles Atlas is in his 60s or 65, and he writes this boy a letter saying, well, I will be at such and such a pier, you know, at 3 p.m. Oh, I'm telling you.
Oh, lovely.
I mean, but it's so sad because he really died in the closet. I called up his lover when he was dying. I said, wouldn't you like to make even a posthumous videotape, you know, coming out, you know, or it's talking about life, but no, they didn't want to hear about it. Yeah, it was really sad.
And that's the only thing you
Besides, he knocked 98-pound weaklings. I love them.
Last year. So it's the only lesbian organization I know that owns their own building, and they did not receive any government funds. So it's self-supporting in the terms that lesbian and women contributed money and did fundraisers to purchase the building.
Is it a national lesbian archives? Like, are there any other lesbian?
Yeah, there are other. No, I mean, the Lesbian History Archives in New York is just that one, but there is a lesbian archives in San Francisco, and I don't know what else, but they're not connected. They're not connected.
Now we're going to go back to Christopher Street.
I have a question about, aren't a lot of these novels really aimed at male heterosexuals, or have you picked ones that, I know Odd Girl Out was a real lesbian novel. I mean, I have limited knowledge.
Some of them were written by men, and I remember in the early 70s, I used to go to 42nd Street to buy them because I didn't know that there was a village, and I didn't know there were other lesbians. So,
were there any ones that you think are particularly good? I mean, all the pulp novels, I mean, in the garbage.
That's the one I read, The Will of Loneliness.
I read Odd Girl Out. I've read.
Right.
How
about The Will of Loneliness?
That was
well, that was
a different. These are pulp novels.
50s paperback. That wasn't. I mean, that was hardcover.
But were any of these others of any particular merit, do you think?
Well,
or do you know of
they
any?
were merit because they gave you an identity of other women being with each other and having sex with each other.
How Dark My Love?
Well, I don't know. I haven't read them all.
Coco would ask that question.
So I got my claws on the Wheel of Loneliness in 1949, 1950, and I read it.
Yeah.
And then I had to burn it because I knew my family was coming.
But even a lesbian novel? Because would they be really that suspicious?
My family, they're so Roman Catholic and homophobic. So I burned it, and it was very difficult. And I thought I was the only faggot in the world.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people went through that when I was on radio.
There was nothing there for us. And you know what I find tragic in being Hispanic myself, but being in Texas, that going to South America or going to Puerto Rico, there is no unity in the gay community. There is no...
No, it'll come. That was like that in the States, because no one wanted to be associated with those damn swishy queens or those dykes. I mean, there was a lot of self-hatred that was, and that all disappeared when people finally really began focusing on it and thinking about it.
I've marched in every...
Boston, in Boston, when I was coming out in the 70s, it was like everybody stayed together, but when I moved here to New York, I couldn't believe the ununity of the young people here. I mean, they don't care about one another. They walk all over each other, they read each other, scratch each other's eyes out, and it just didn't make any sense to me.
I moved to New York in '58, and I met a guy on Park Avenue in the 30s. I moved here on a Friday. Saturday, was walking. He took me to his apartment, and I said, gee, I found probably a prospective lover. And when we got through making love and so forth, I said, could I have your phone number? He said, no, I don't want to see you again.
No.
That was such a shock to me, because I thought, wow, I was 20 years old. I said, gee, I'd love to see him, because it was the first time I was able to find something that I thought would be substantial.
He would grow up with you. I forgot your name. I don't know what name. Did you have a name down here? So we went in there. I was going to show you about
So this is a window by the Lesbian Breast Cancer Support Group. Tucker Farley helped curate this window, and she must be back at the neutral zone right now, so unfortunately she can't be here to speak about it. Our group's running late for some reason. Our group's
I don't know. No, you know, I understand that this window, they've asked them to take it down tomorrow. Is that true?
We're going to be taking down one window.
Oh, just one window?
One window.
Is there a reason? Is that window particularly objectionable? Why are they taking it down?
The merchant has indicated it's a space. He wants clear access to his bar so that people can see through.
Oh.
Nothing to do with content. Nothing to do with content.
Oh.
But this one, that window will be going to Crazy Nanny. It will not be going away.
Oh, well, good. I'm going to come back tomorrow to get better pictures, because these are quite dramatic and interesting photographs.
Have they got any photographs of it all?
Yeah.
I mean, is that the window?
Impose silence about any area of our
Okay, so let's head to the dugout.
I mean, especially something as serious and dramatic as this.
And this is the only one that they're going to split up?
Isn't that unbelievable? Makes me angry too. You're not the only one. Well, I'm glad he said he taken it to where.
This is the first year that the media or any political thing had decided to say anything about it. Not just among minority women and gay women, but just women, period, in general. Just like the window back
when
there.
there's no gay life, whoever heard of gay life, they all run around here like it doesn't exist.
He's well known for College Hill for the past, I think it's about 8 to 10 years.
This is a series of 3 paintings by an artist, Kieran McGonnell. There's one here and 2 on the opposite side. There are also pieces inside of the window, so it's not only the frame, there are also pieces inside the window itself.
definition what he was trying to accomplish?
Well, I think he's doing parts, body parts. This one I can't figure out. Looks like tits to me.
Yeah. This looks like an ass without cheeks.
No, these are all.
Oh, that's actually the chest. You're right, right.
Yeah, we got a curator as well.
Body parts in the church.
This is us, Robert.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Robert Sember, and I am responsible for this. This is my response to a suggestion made by Douglas Cribb that in the AIDS crisis, in addition to having lost people, we have also lost, in his phrase, a culture of sexual possibility, which suggests that not only may we be required to do the work of mourning for those who have died from AIDS, but we may also have to mourn certain sexual practices and perhaps even certain places. And I'm curious to know how that might be possible. And this, to some extent, is my attempt for myself to try and conduct such a project of mourning. To try and engage in that work of rethinking and remembering and returning to and re-envisioning the place that is the piers. What I've taken is the image of the ruin, because I think that that is a very, for me, it's a very useful image. It's much more useful in the idea of a monument or the museum. A ruin is something that is still changing. A ruin is something that is still revisited in certain ways. And you just need to look across the road and you can see that the piers is still extremely active, and it's still extremely popular and important and vibrant space. And I'm hoping to suggest that maybe within the activity that's still happening there now, if we think of the piers as a ruin, we'll also be able to glimpse in its present state, within the needs that the AIDS crisis evokes in us, some of the past, some of the history, some of what was once there, some of the culture of sexual possibility that people were once able to participate in. I invite you to look through the glory holes in the bottom. And there's also plenty of room, and I'm hoping that people will perhaps write something themselves. I have a pen that can write on here, and then maybe that there is something that you would like to say about your recollection of the film, or the importance that they hold for you now. I want you to write on that.
That's our tour. Go to the neutral zone and have a drink. They may all be gone.
You know, I'm surprised no one did anything about the trucks. Because I have friends who they talk about the trucks. This is yesterday, they're throwing the trucks all the time. Nobody did anything about the trucks. Yeah.
The abandoned
Yeah.
trailers?
Yeah, because everybody's talking about how he's going them all the time.
All right, let's go.
This is very good. This is very interesting. Very well.
My friend at Christopher Street and just tagged us.
Oh, really?
She's a Jersey person too. She lives in Jersey City.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful.
Do a bridge and tunnel thing to show that there are lesbians and gays outside of Greenwich Village.
A historic tour of Hoboken, right?
Yeah.
I know a drag queen named Chelsea who ran the first whorehouse in Hoboken.
Really?
What part of Hoboken?
I don't know, you have to ask her. She now lives in Jersey City. Chelsea, she's a transsexual.
Wow.
She talks about running the only whorehouse